What if everything you're clinging to is actually holding you back? That job you think defines you, the relationship you won't walk away from, even the opinions you defend like your life depends on it. What if they're not sources of power, but weights dragging you under? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, had a radical idea. True strength isn't about control. It's about letting go. He once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that choice begins when we release what no longer serves us. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, the way your jaw clenches when someone challenges a belief you've held for years. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they make the world feel safe, predictable. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true? Maybe you learned Santa wasn't real, or that the bad kids at school were just struggling. That moment of discomfort was actually growth knocking at the door. Jung believed we all have these blind spots, parts of ourselves we refuse to see because they're painful, messy, or just inconvenient. Here's the thing. Your mind is wired to resist change. It's easier to pretend you've got it all figured out than to admit you might be wrong. But Jung saw this as the biggest trap of all. The more tightly you grip an idea, a goal, or even an identity, the more it owns you. Think about the last time you obsessed over a problem, how it consumed your thoughts, stole your sleep. Now imagine loosening your hold, just a little. What if the answer wasn't in pushing harder, but in stepping back? Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we bury because they don't fit the image we want to project. Maybe it's jealousy we disguise as ambition, or fear we call being realistic. When we ignore these hidden pieces, they control us from the dark. But when we face them, that's where real power begins. It's like untangling a knot by relaxing your fingers instead of pulling. Consider a time you were stuck in a loop, replaying an argument, fixating on a mistake. The harder you tried to fix it in your head, the worse it felt. Jung would say that's your ego fighting to maintain control. But beneath that struggle, there's a quieter, wiser voice. It doesn't shout, it waits. And it only speaks when you stop clinging. This isn't about giving up. It's about making space for something deeper than force. Imagine holding a handful of sand. Squeeze tight, and it slips through your fingers. Open your palm, and it rests there, full and undisturbed. Jung's wisdom reminds us that the things we fear losing, approval, certainty, even love, often settle when we stop grasping. So next time you feel that familiar tension, the need to be right, to win, to hold on, ask yourself, what am I really protecting? Is this serving me, or am I serving it? Because true power isn't in the grip, it's in the release. This cracks open a deeper understanding of why letting go isn't about losing control, but about finding a different kind of power. We all begin in the same place, seeing the world in simple terms. Things are good or bad, right or wrong, and our reactions are immediate. If someone cuts us off in traffic, we honk. If a coworker undermines us, we snap back. Life feels straightforward because we haven't yet questioned why we react the way we do. This is where most of us live, until something shakes us out of it. Then comes the confusing middle. This is when life starts to feel more complicated, and our old ways of reacting don't work as well. You might be someone who resists change at first, clinging to the idea that if you just push harder, things will go back to how they were. But they don't. Carl Jung called this the shadow work, the messy, uncomfortable phase where we're forced to confront the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Maybe you notice how quick you are to judge others, or how tightly you hold on to grudges. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions like this because it's disorienting to realize that our instincts might not always serve us. This is where the real shift happens. Instead of reacting on autopilot, you may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately. That pause is the beginning of true power. Jung believed that the goal wasn't to eliminate our darker impulses, but to understand them, to integrate them. When we do, we stop being controlled by them. A knee-jerk reaction is like a puppet on a string, yanked by every little provocation. But a thoughtful response comes from a place of awareness. It's the difference between shouting at your partner in frustration and taking a breath to ask yourself why their comment bothered you so much. The tough middle phase is where most people get stuck because it's easier to stay in the familiar chaos than to face the uncertainty of change. Jung saw this as a necessary struggle, the kind that shapes us into more complete versions of ourselves. We start noticing how often we've mistaken control for strength, how much energy we've wasted trying to force outcomes. Letting go isn't about giving up. It's about recognizing what's truly yours to hold on to and what isn't. Slowly, a new clarity emerges. The world doesn't feel as black and white anymore, but that's not a bad thing. You begin to see the nuances, how people's actions are rarely about you personally, how much of your stress comes from resisting what you can't change. This is where Jung's wisdom shines. True power comes from acceptance, not domination. It's the difference between clenching your fist and opening your hand. One leaves you tense and exhausted. The other leaves you ready to receive. We've all had moments where we thought holding tighter was the answer, but life has a way of showing us that sometimes the grip itself is the problem. Through this discomfort, we begin to see the cracks in the armor we've worn for so long. It's not that the armor is useless. It probably protected us when we needed it most. But now it feels heavy, restrictive, like it's holding us back from something we can't quite name. This is the first whisper of growth, the quiet realization that what once worked might not be what we need anymore. And while that's unsettling, it's also the start of something new, something better. At first, the discomfort feels like a problem to solve, a fire to put out. We might try to ignore it, distract ourselves, or even blame others for the unease. But slowly, if we let ourselves sit with it, we notice something surprising. The discomfort isn't here to punish us. It's here to teach us. It's pointing us toward the parts of our lives that are out of alignment, the beliefs that no longer serve us, the relationships that need tending or releasing. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier as you lean into this process. The mental fog that used to accompany even small choices starts to lift, not because the choices themselves have changed, but because you have. The old scripts, the ones that told you to people please, to hustle for worthiness, to fear mistakes, begin to lose their power. In their place, a quieter, steadier voice emerges. It doesn't shout with certainty, but it speaks with clarity. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The co-worker who always interrupts, the traffic that used to ruin your morning, the endless scroll of bad news. These things still exist, but they don't hook you the way they once did. It's not that you've become indifferent. You've just outgrown the habit of handing over your peace so easily. You start to see how much energy you've wasted on things you can't control. And without even trying, you begin redirecting that energy toward what truly matters. This isn't about perfection. There are still days when the old patterns creep back in, when the discomfort feels overwhelming, when it's easier to slip into autopilot than to stay present. But even those moments become part of the journey. They're not failures, they're reminders. Reminders that growth isn't linear, that healing isn't about never stumbling, but about learning how to get up with more grace each time. And then, almost without realizing it, you start to notice shifts in how you relate to yourself. The inner critic that used to narrate every mistake begins to sound distant, like a radio playing in another room. You catch yourself responding to your own struggles with kindness, the way you would for a friend. This, more than anything, is the heart of the transformation. It's not about becoming someone new, but about returning to who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. Together we discover that freedom isn't about escaping discomfort, but learning how to move through it. It's about recognizing that the tightness in your chest, the restlessness in your mind, the ache in your heart, they're not enemies, they're guides. And when we stop resisting them, they lose their sharp edges. They become just another part of being human, another thread in the tapestry of our lives. Carl Jung once described this kind of freedom like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. For years, you've been walking around in them, thinking the blisters were normal, that the pinching was just part of life. But now, standing barefoot on solid ground, you realize how much unnecessary pain you've endured. The relief isn't dramatic. It's simple, profound. It's the quiet joy of being exactly where you are, exactly as you are, without the weight of what no longer serves you. And that's the beautiful paradox of this journey. The more we accept ourselves, the messy, imperfect, ever-evolving truth of who we are, the lighter we feel. The world doesn't change, but our relationship to it does. We stop waiting for everything to be perfect before we allow ourselves to be happy. We start finding joy in the ordinary, peace in the unfinished, and meaning in the process itself. This is how we come home to ourselves, not with fanfare or grand declarations, but with small, steady steps, not by avoiding the dark, but by learning how to carry our own light. And as we do, we realize the most important truth of all. We were never broken. We were just growing.